Good morning, everyone. Buenos dias a todos. I'm Chris Cochran, Executive Director of ReFED. We're a think tank focused solely on the issue of food waste. I was really enthusiastic about attending this event because I was looking at the speakers, the attendees, and just feel like, if not us, then who? If not now, then when? For creating the food system that we want in the future. And was really encouraged both to see a lot of familiar faces and meet a lot of new faces today. So look forward to just not only the ideas that are presented formally, but also people create ideas and interaction with each other. So I think us all spending the time together today is a really powerful moment for idea generation. And also just want to say a special thanks to the Basque government and the Basque Culinary Center for bringing together such an amazing event and group of people. So thank you. My personal background is I started my career with farmers in Honduras, Central America, and really fell in love with the food system through that experience, working with growers, thinking about agriculture and food as our oldest industry. Last month, I was in Israel and the Palestinian territories and able to visit Jericho, which some of you may know from biblical reference, but others may know from it being the birthplace of agriculture 12,000 years ago. And when I think about this system that we've created over the last 12,000 years, it not only is so personal, it's also the system that uses the most resources in our world and is one of the basic rights and needs that we all share in common. Was also really encouraged just to see people not only thinking globally, but also acting locally. I live in Berkeley, California. This is my first time up in the Salesforce Tower in such an amazing venue, but even I was hearing from Alice Waters and just really appreciate your leadership and live right between Chez Panisse and the Edible Schoolyard. So not only are you a light in our community broadly, but in my local community. So let's talk about food waste. And I have the lens first and foremost of the United States. I should mention that after I spent time with farmers in Honduras, I did spend 6 years with Walmart, working with their corporate sustainability team, leading sustainability for their global produce business. Through that, I fell in love with this idea that food waste is a solvable problem with aligned interests and where we can make a lot of progress quickly. Many of you are familiar with the Sustainable Development Goals released in 2015. One of the reasons I went to Honduras was actually because of the first generation of Sustainable Development Goals led by Jeffrey Sachs and the Earth Institute 15 years before that. And for those of you familiar with the Sustainable Development Goals, the 12th area is all about sustainable consumption. And within that, we have a goal, 12.3, very easy to remember, 1, 2, 3, that is about cutting food waste in half by 2030. As I've been starting to change my perspective as we're past the midpoint in this calendar year from 2019 to 2020, I also have been challenged to really elevate my gaze to 2030 when those goals are set to come due. And when I think about a decade, or when I think about 2030 on the surface, it seems like a long way away. But I think all of us and our perspectives will change quickly in 6 months when the clock strikes midnight and we're entering 2020, thinking about the perspective of a decade being 10 years ago and where we were, it's not much time. And that gives me a renewed sense of urgency to be addressing these problems. But I think there's opportunity here. So as Larissa mentioned, we're a think tank. We collect data, produce insights, and also then a do tank. We try to activate against those, whether that's with large food businesses or capital providers. In the United States, we don't waste 30%, we waste 40% of that food. It comes across the supply chain. I think to this group, one call to action I have is to think about as restaurants, as grocery stores, and as those who really shape, as chefs, those who shape consumers' relationship with food. I think it's such a powerful influence point in the supply chain to be a chef or in the restaurant or grocery store industry, because you both have influence upstream with producers and also have influence really shaping people's relationship with food downstream. I sometimes quip that no one should care about food waste. It's simply a strategy, a means to an end. It impacts all these other things that we care about, whether that is the financial sustainability of businesses, whether that's the cost to consumers in their homes, especially with growing income inequality, whether that's the natural resource use or it being one of the leading contributors of greenhouse gas emissions, or whether we think about the opportunity costs of having this dual problem of abundance, we're wasting food, but also food insecurity and a host of public health issues caused by our imbalanced relationship with food. So that's why I care about food waste, is because it affects these other areas that I really hold dear. ReFED focuses on the problem, but then quickly turns to the solutions. And we use cost-benefit analysis to calculate the investment needed and the value that could be created from solutions to food waste. I encourage those of you who are interested to go to our website to learn about those 27 solutions in more detail. We even have it broken out depending on where your point of influence and intervention is. If you're a restaurant, we have solutions recommended for you there, grocery store, a grower, et cetera. One of the insights we came out with is that there's a food recovery hierarchy that's prescribed by the EPA in the United States. It says, first, we should reduce at source, prevent food waste. Second, recover it and feed it to people. And third, recycle it and never to landfill. And I think it kind of follows the old adage in the 1980s in the US of reduce, reuse, recycle. We found that actually that kind of moral framework actually follows the economic framework as well. It is far more profitable, whether you're a consumer or a business, to prevent food waste in the first place. Then after that, recovery solutions produce the most economic benefit, and finally, recycling solutions. So the next section I'd actually like to, that's framing the problem and solutions. I'd actually just like to talk about where are we? So my gaze is moving from 2019 to 2030. So I want to cover 4 key trends that I think this group should be aware of, and then calls to action around what we should be doing. These solutions will cost $18 billion in investment to produce $100 billion in economic value. And that covers the gamut of the things we care about. Doubling food donations of healthy food, importantly, because that's where the intersection is with food waste and food recovery is healthy foods. We talked about the business profit and also the environmental impacts. Not to mention the job creation. We'll talk in a minute about imperfect produce. I can see their building when you go over and stand on the south side of the Salesforce Tower. They've gone from a startup 3 years ago with 3 founders to now having 1,000 people employed. So I think this, again, touches on all of these things we care about. First trend, food businesses. I start coming from this lens because I believe in market-based solutions, and I have a lens of business since I came from Walmart. And the insight is that 2/3 of the top 50 global food companies have now committed to the Sustainable Development Goal 12.3. And I think a few notable examples that are inspiration to me, and I'd be happy to share a few more examples because many of these companies are doing amazing work. One is that when I look to Kroger, they actually have said we want to go beyond cutting food waste in half. We actually want to eliminate food waste to landfill in our business. So they're setting, I think, a really great ambition and aspiration for us to lift our gaze beyond incremental change. I also think about IKEA. So IKEA has said, we don't want to wait until 2030. We want to accomplish our goal by 2020, next year. So again, this aggressive mindset of how quickly can we accomplish this goal. I also have been, coming from my previous employer, Walmart. They have said, we're making a technology play in a technology called Eden to save $2 billion over the next 5 years in food waste costs. So I think demonstrating the power of technology and also the size of the opportunity for food businesses and profit. But these food businesses can't create the innovation fast enough internally and must look externally for innovators, for startups and growth stage companies who are providing solutions to food waste. We track these through an innovator database at ReFED, which is available publicly on our website. And we have been tracking over 500 startups in this sector. And they range from tech companies to recycling organizations to companies using brand new technologies for food recovery, not just prevention. Wanted to mention 4 to really ground us in examples. Appeal Sciences is based down in Santa Barbara. It actually grew out of a PhD program there. They produce an edible coating to extend the shelf life. They've been able to double the shelf life of avocados. Imperfect produce takes seconds from farms, delivers them to consumers at below market value, solving also a food desert problem. Replate uses an Uber Eats or DoorDash-like technology to recover food and deliver it to people in need. Fulcrum Bioenergy takes food waste and is partnered with BP and also LAX, the airport, to produce jet fuel from food waste. Because it's an active area of innovation, money follows innovation, so there's venture capital and foundation funding going into this. But this is also an active policy landscape, and I think one of the moments to be in California is to think about California now having a law that requires food businesses to not send food waste to landfill, but to find other ways to either prevent, recover, or recycle that food waste. So I can talk more about that later. This is also an active part of the Farm Bill and regional initiative. So a call to action to the Basque government is make sure the Basque government has a goal aligned with Sustainable Development Goal 12.3. 3 opportunities for engagement. We continue to gather the best data and produce the best insights. We don't generate that data internally. We partner with all of you. So partner with us in the Roadmap 2020 that will be released next year at our Food Waste Summit. This year, we are hosting a Food Waste Summit here in San Francisco, October 29th through 30th, so I invite you to join us there. And then finally, I got to participate in the collab, and similar to the collab and what they're doing with prevention, we're actually partnered with IDEO on a recovery accelerator. So for those using technology and earned revenue, nonprofits still, but who are applying those market-based concepts to food recovery and food donations. I invite you to think about the mindset of how quickly can we solve this goal and create this both financial, social, and environmental value together, and invite you to our website and to connect to ReFED if we can be useful to you as a resource. I'm looking forward to our discussion. Next, we'll hear from Anthony Mint, who I've been fortunate enough to meet just a couple of nights ago, but have followed for a number of years. Really excited to hear about regenerative agriculture and the work you're up to, Anthony.